It started at Panipat, a plain north of Delhi. Babur won the battle that founded this empire there, then split it between his sons like property, giving them borders instead of loyalty. Every Mughal emperor after him inherited that same problem for the next 3 centuries. Humayun inherited a throne, but not the men to hold it. One of his own brothers, Kamran, seized his capital within months of their father's death. When a rival army later crushed Humayun and sent him fleeing into exile, that same brother refused him shelter and did nothing to help. Kamran was captured, forgiven, and let go, then rebelled again and again for over a decade, testing his brother's patience every single time. For 15 years, Humayun survived as a wandering king, borrowing foreign armies just to stay alive. And somewhere in that flight, an heir was born with no kingdom left to inherit. When Humayun finally clawed his way back to Delhi, Kamran was captured one last time. Mughal law forbade killing a prince of royal blood, so instead, Kamran was blinded with lime and needles in punishment for a decade of betrayal, and sent away for good. Humayun got his throne back. He didn't get to keep it long. A boy became emperor of India with a regent, Bairam Khan, doing the actual ruling. Akbar spent the rest of his reign proving he needed no one. He turned on the men who had made him king, forgave betrayal when it suited him, and crushed it without mercy when it didn't. But he never solved the one problem his father and grandfather had already failed to solve. What happens when a son stops waiting for his turn? By the end, his own son Salim had built a rival government of his own, and had one of Akbar's closest friends murdered to stop a warning about his rebellion from ever reaching his father. Akbar forgave him anyway. Love and betrayal, arriving in the same breath, the family's oldest habit. Jahangir became emperor already watching his back. His own son Khusrau rebelled before the throne had even cooled, and paid for it dearly. For the rest of his reign, Jahangir ruled in name, while his wife Nur Jahan ruled in practice. The first Mughal empress powerful enough to strike coins in her own name. That arrangement held until succession politics turned 2 more sons against each other, and the nobleman Mahabat Khan grew bold enough to hold the emperor himself hostage in his own camp. Jahangir died far from his capital. Before anyone had time to grieve, 2 armies were already riding hard in opposite directions to claim what was his. Shah Jahan took no chances. Every rival male relative in the family was gone within weeks of his coronation. His own brother Shahryar blinded and executed, his cousins gone the same way. Nobody spared. Then, having just proven exactly how this story ends, he gave his own 4 sons separate armies and separate provinces. He had studied his family's history closely. He repeated it anyway. When Shah Jahan fell seriously ill, his 4 sons didn't wait for a funeral. All of them claimed the throne within weeks. 3 from provinces that their own father had handed them. Dara Shikoh held the capital and the title of heir, and had the least appetite of the 4 for actually fighting for it. Aurangzeb, the most disciplined general in the family, picked his brothers off one at a time. First his ally Murad Bakhsh, who trusted him and paid for it with his own life, then Shah Shuja, crushed in battle and killed later in exile. Dara ran and sought shelter with an Afghan chieftain whose life he had once spared. But this time, that same man handed him straight over to Aurangzeb's soldiers instead. Dara was dragged back to Delhi in chains, paraded through the streets on a filthy elephant in front of the same people who used to bow to him, before he was executed on Aurangzeb's orders. His head was delivered to Agra fort on a covered platter, presented to his own father, still locked away there, as final proof the war was over. Even Dara's son, Sulaiman Shikoh, didn't escape either, hunted down and poisoned in prison. By the time the war ended, all 3 brothers and a nephew were dead, and a father sat locked inside his own fort, tended by the one child who never left him. Aurangzeb inherited a throne built entirely on his family's bodies. He would rule it for almost 50 years, longer than any Mughal before or after him, and plenty of time to decide if it had been worth it. Shah Jahan finally died in that same captivity 8 years later, tended only by his daughter, Jahanara. Aurangzeb, meanwhile, spent almost none of his long reign at peace, not with his enemies, and not with his own children. One son rebelled and fled the country for good. His daughter Zeb-un-Nisa, a celebrated poet, spent 2 decades locked away for backing that same brother's rebellion. And the final quarter-century of his reign went entirely into wars in the Deccan that drained the treasury faster than any enemy ever could. Aurangzeb had just spent a lifetime demonstrating exactly how to inherit a Mughal throne, and his own sons had clearly been paying attention. He wasn't dead a week before 3 of them, Bahadur Shah, Azam Shah, and Kam Bakhsh, were marching against each other. The fighting claimed Azam Shah at the Battle of Jajau, killed alongside 2 of his own sons, 3 generations gone in a single afternoon. It cost Kam Bakhsh his life 2 years later, defeated alone near Hyderabad, far from home. Bahadur Shah, the son who finally won it all, lasted 5 years on the throne he had fought so hard for before his own body gave out. For the next decade, the throne itself stopped mattering. 2 powerful noblemen didn't. The Sayyid brothers commanded the only army loyal enough to decide who actually sat on the throne, and they used that power ruthlessly. They helped one nephew, Farrukhsiyar, murder his own uncle, Emperor Jahandar Shah, for the crown, then installed Farrukhsiyar as emperor themselves. From then on, the Sayyids made every real decision. The emperor only wore the crown. When Farrukhsiyar tried to rule on his own and break free of them, he was blinded on Sayyid orders, stripped of the throne in the cruelest way possible, then strangled and removed from it for good. 2 more puppets came and went so fast that neither reign is worth remembering. And by the time a 4th one took power within that same single year, everyone at court could see exactly what the Sayyid brothers were doing. This new emperor, Muhammad Shah, had learned the lesson well. Within months, he had Sayyid Hussein Ali Khan assassinated, and Sayyid Abdullah Khan defeated in battle and later poisoned in prison. The kingmakers had built 4 emperors in a row, and the 4th one was the one who finally destroyed them. By 1739, an empire that once commanded the wealth of a continent couldn't defend its own capital. The Persian conqueror Nadir Shah crushed Muhammad Shah's army in one afternoon, then spent days stripping Delhi of everything valuable it had left. What followed was a slow, humiliating unraveling. Emperor Ahmad Shah Bahadur lost his throne and his sight to his own vizier, Imad-ul-Mulk. His successor, Alamgir II, installed by that same vizier, was murdered on his orders 5 years later. The next emperor, Shah Alam II, couldn't safely enter his own capital for over a decade, and when the British finally defeated him in battle, becoming their pensioner felt almost like relief. It wasn't. A generation later, that same emperor was blinded personally by an outsider, an Afghan warlord named Ghulam Qadir, who stormed the palace himself to do it with his own hands. The same fate the family had been inflicting on each other for 2 centuries, except this time it came from outside the family. By the 19th century, Akbar Shah II ruled exactly one building, and only because the British allowed it. His own descendants fought over ceremonial titles that no longer commanded a single soldier. When rebellion broke out in 1857, Bahadur Shah II, an old man who had never wanted the job, became its reluctant figurehead, dragged into a war he never asked for and had no real chance of winning. Delhi fell, and British soldiers found him hiding inside his own ancestor's tomb. What came next needed no exaggeration to be cruel. A British officer named William Hodson had 3 of his sons and a grandson executed. Then Hodson came to the old emperor himself, carrying a covered tray. When he lifted the cover, it held their heads. Proof, he said, that the emperor's line was finished. He lived another 5 years in exile in Rangoon, forgotten in a foreign port, and was buried afterward in a grave with no name on it, deliberately, so it could never become a shrine. 330 years after Panipat, the dynasty ended not on a battlefield, but in a colonial prison yard nobody thought was worth marking. It took more than a century, until 1991, for anyone to even find that grave again.